I'm Vincent V. I'm working right now in the delegation of Cambodia, and before I worked for 4.5 years in Botswana and in Barbados as well in the EU delegation. So I've been managing budget support for 6 to 7 years, especially in the education sector. I'd like to make this presentation in two parts. The first part would be to look at the framework for policy dialogue in Cambodia. And see what is working, what is not working, and that's actually the opportunity we took to improve the policy dialogue. And then the second part is really an example in terms of how we strengthen policy dialogue in the education sector, and especially around the issue of the allocation of resources to the education sector. Actually, there's quite a complex framework for policy dialogue and donor coordination in Cambodia at different levels. As you can see here, at the highest level, you have the Cambodia Development Cooperation Forum, which is chaired by the Prime Minister and co-chaired by the World Bank, and now it has changed to the ADB. And normally they are meeting every 18 months. But actually the last meeting was in 2009, and then it has been postponed maybe to 2013, 2014, because there have been some issues between the government and the World Bank. So already that's not working so well. So on one side you have the development partners, what we call the DP, on the other side the government. So you have this Cambodia Development Cooperation Forum at the highest level, and then below you have a government donor coordination committee which is meeting every 6 months, and the chair is the Ministry of Economy and Finance. And then at the, let's say at the sector level or the line ministries, you have like 18 to 19 groups. And the specific case in the education sector, we have the Education Sector Working Group. The chair is the Minister of the Ministry of Education. And then below this level, then we still have some sub-technical working groups where we really work together with the ministry in some sub-areas in the sector. Public finance management, deconcentration, teacher development, early childhood education. So there are several working groups where we look at the strategies, new guidelines, policies, budgets. So that's where really we get all the technical work done. Last year, when we started to engage a bit more with the new education budget support program with the Ministry of Education, we realized actually in those joint technical working group meetings, it was what we call like empty dialogue. That's actually the agenda is set for each year, it's really fixed, and we have mainly some routine presentations, and there's really little room for discussions. They would just tell you, okay, the Ministry of Education has implemented 60% of the policy actions foreseen in 2011, but without going into the details of the action. Or we have spent 45% of our program-based budget, which is 2% more than last year, but without really giving any figures. Another example, we have held the 3rd round of consultation, and we finalized the 4th draft of the report on decentralization of functions. But then we don't discuss exactly the report or if there is any issue with that. And then at the meeting of the Education Sector Working Group, the development partners, we suggested to UNICEF, who was the chair at the time, well, let's try to ask a question about something that is not in the agenda and that is quite an issue. So at the next Joint Technical Working Group meeting, UNICEF asked, okay, Excellency Minister, can we ask about progress in the implementation of standardized tests in grade 3, a very key indicators in terms of quality. And actually a bit of surprise from the minister, who say, okay, has anybody any comments? No, okay, let's just move to the next point, please. And also the fact that very important that the DP were not prepared really for this meeting. So if there was a point on the table, there was no common agreement from the DP on how to reply or to respond to the point raised by the minister. So at the following Education Sector Working Group meeting, we suggested to the DP, well, what we could do is first of all, try to agree on a list of very important key issues in the sector in terms of quality, access, equity, where we see there are some problems, and then we come to the ministry with this list of issues, and we try to have it for a year to have discussions around these specific issues. We could prepare some background documents and share it with Ministry of Education in advance. So that's very important, because it was to make sure that they are not caught by surprise in the meeting when we ask a question. So they know in advance, 1 week, 2 weeks in advance, okay, we would like to know more about this information. And well, based then on these suggestions, we've discussed it, and the results basically is that the DP agreed on priority policy issues that it's really generated momentum because each DP mentioned it in every possible occasion, be it the National Education Congress, the midterm review workshop of the education sector plan, any seminar that a DP would hold, they would not just focus on their own project or niche issues, let's say. They were really mentioning all these issues, the decline of resources, the need to implement this grade 3 test that I talked about before. And then we got through the proposal to include the formal agenda item on policy discussion. So that was including formally in the quarterly meeting of the technical working group a specific agenda on policy discussions. And then the priorities are discussed, and then the ministers actually just instruct the sub-working group to work on these issues. They basically give a mandate to the sub-working group to work on it. So quite some positive results after this initiative there to structure policy dialogue. I wanted specifically to look at an issue that we, as the EU, we really pushed, and we did a lot of analysis research on it to really back up the policy dialogue around this issue. And that's basically the allocation of resources going to education and the education expenditures. In our budget support program, we had a target on the share of government resources going to the education sector. And then we realized really that it was going down from, you see here in 2007, the Ministry of Education got 19.2%, and in 2012 we went down to 15.9%. So you can see the trend was really going down. We made a very simple presentation, 4 slides that I will show. And then we decided, yeah, let's show it at the Joint Technical Working Group to try to raise the issue of the resources going to the education sector. So, as I said there, the issue was really the budget share decline in the last 5 years that we see here on the graph. And the entry point, the opportunity there for policy dialogue was, as I said, that it was a target of the budget support program and it was not met. So it basically gave us the opportunity to look further into the issue when discussing the target with the Ministry of Education. And then we show them, look, in the last 6 years, on average, the Ministry of Education budget only increased by 13% per year, whereas all the other ministry, finance, defense, security, Ministry of Commerce, you see they all increase around 24% per year. And on average, the national budget increased by 17.5%. Already that created some quite of eye-opening in the Ministry of Education, that they see, okay, yeah, we are getting much less increase than the other ministries, and that's in the past 6 years on average. Then we saw, let's compare to what the Ministry of Finance thought they would give to the Ministry of Education. That's called the Medium-Term Expenditure Framework, which gives you the budget forecast for the next 3 years. In 2009, the MTEF for 2010-12 forecast that they would give 22.6% to the Ministry of Education in 2012. Then the following year, in 2010, when they revised the MTEF 211-13 say, well, no, actually, I will give only 17.9% to the Ministry of Education. So already you can see like a 4 percentage point difference in 1 year in what the Ministry of Finance thought they would give to Ministry of Education. And here, it's also important is what the education sector plan said they would need as resources to implement the ESP intervention. So they say in 2012, I will need 20% of government resources in order to achieve my ESP objective. But what did they get in the end in the budget law is only 15.9%. Now this slide is about now going into the expenditures of the Ministry of Education, especially how much they spent compared to what they get. And again, this bold line is the Ministry of Education. So we see in 2008 they spent 97% of their allocation, in 2009 95%, in 2010 88%. Whereas you can see for some ministries like National Defense, Council of Ministers, they spent, 150% of their allocation, Council of Ministers, 300% of their allocation. So there's really a sort of a transfer of resources that were supposed to go to education that in the end fall into the Ministry of Defense.